You know, we communicate every single day, often taking it completely for granted. But right beneath our casual chats and daily emails, there's a complex, invisible machinery at work. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack exactly how that machinery works, piece by piece, using the core foundational concepts from our source material.
Here is our game plan for today. We'll start with the art of sharing, move into the forms of communication, weigh the pros and cons, and look beyond the words. Then we'll map out the communication cycle, and finally close the loop with the power of feedback.
Section 1. The Art of Sharing, Laying the Foundation.
At its very core, the word communication comes from the Latin word communicare, which simply means to share. And honestly, that right there, sharing, is the fundamental goal. It's not just about talking at someone or writing words on a page, it's the active process of sharing understanding, conveying your ideas, and building relationships. Every single time you open your mouth or type a message, your primary objective is to share a little piece of your internal world with someone else.
Why this matters becomes super obvious in high-stakes environments, like a job interview. Think about it. Organizations aren't just looking for human encyclopedias, right? They want a candidate who gives way more than a one-word answer. They want to see you elaborate, listen carefully, and actually engage in active listening. Ultimately, they're evaluating your ability to share, because if you can't share your expertise clearly, well, the expertise itself kind of loses its value.
Moving to Section 2, Forms of Communication, the Taxonomy of Expression.
So, our source material categorizes this taxonomy into four main pillars: verbal, nonverbal, written, and visual. Think of these as your toolkit. Whether you're crafting an email, giving a big presentation, or just shooting a friend a knowing look, you are relying on one or maybe a combination of these four methods to get your point across.
Let's zero in on oral communication for a second, which is a massive subset of verbal communication. This is generally the most popular mode we use, and it relies heavily on spoken language. We're talking about video calls, face-to-face interactions, presentations, or speeches. It's dynamic, it's immediate, and it's just deeply ingrained in our daily lives.
All right, Section 3, the pros and cons. Analyzing verbal communication.
When we weigh the pros and cons here, verbal communication is great because it saves time and money. It's a reliable, cheap way to communicate that usually gets you a quick, complete understanding right there in the moment. But on the flip side, there is no permanent record. Once those words are out there, they're gone. Unlike with written communication. We also run into the villains of our story: language barriers, issues connecting over long distances, and the simple fact that spoken words are totally unsuitable for conveying long, complex messages that you might need to reference later.
Section 4. Beyond the words, the unspoken signals.
This brings us to a fascinating area: nonverbal communication. This form relies entirely on conveying messages without using any words at all. It's all about your gestures, your facial expressions, your body language, and your posture. And what's absolutely crucial to take away from our source notes is that nonverbal communication heavily complements your verbal communication. Remember that high-stakes job interview we talked about? Having good posture and maintaining eye contact? That's your nonverbal communication doing the heavy lifting to prove that you're confident and engaged.
Section 5, the communication cycle, the invisible machinery.
Let's look at the actual sequential path of a message in action. It's a 5-step process. Step 1 starts with the communicator, or the sender, who actually has the information. Step 2 is encoding, and this is critical. The sender has to adapt the message into a suitable form, navigating things like cultural differences and language. Step 3, it goes through a medium, or the channel, like an email or a phone call. Step 4, it hits the receiver. And finally, Step 5, decoding, where the receiver interprets and actually understands the message. If all that goes right, an idea successfully travels from one brain to another.
Let's pause for a moment of active learning with a quick pop quiz direct from our source notes to see if you're decoding this explainer effectively. Can you spot the imposter? Which one of these is not a step in the forward momentum of the communication cycle? Is it A, encoding, B, medium, C, noise, or D, feedback?
If you guessed C, noise, you hit the nail on the head. Noise is not a step in the cycle. Actually, it's the ultimate antagonist of our cycle. As our sources explain, noise is a problem created in the medium. It can interfere with communication, cause misunderstandings during decoding, or disrupt the message so completely that it never even gets received. We are constantly battling noise, whether that's literal static on a bad Wi-Fi call or just a poorly worded email that ruins your entire morning.
Section 6. The power of feedback. Closing the loop.
To keep that communication loop closed, we need feedback. But feedback isn't just a one-size-fits-all concept. It takes a few different forms. There is descriptive feedback, which gives meaningful, detailed analysis and suggestions. There is specific feedback, which focuses tightly on one particular element without getting into generalities. And then there's non-specific feedback, which takes the exact opposite approach, giving a broad, general overview of the entire interaction. Depending on the situation, choosing the right type of feedback is absolutely essential to keeping the whole communication cycle healthy.
So, we've unpacked the exact machinery of how thoughts travel between human minds. We've seen the taxonomy of methods, the pros and cons, the sequential cycle, and the vital role of feedback. I want to leave you with a provocative question to ask yourself before your next high-stakes conversation, your next email, or your next big presentation. Are you consciously encoding your ideas effectively to share them, or are you just contributing to the noise? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this helps you communicate with a whole lot more clarity and intention moving forward.